before Christmas, and we are gonna be working on some cool stuff this week. We're about to go work on the 350Z for Frank. Super stoked on that. We needed to let the paint outgas for like a week and a half, so we're gonna wrap that up this week. We also have a few other ones. We have a long time build. This is a very cool one. A lot of stuff going on. Pokemon gills, dual hex halos. We're gonna wrap it this week, and then a lot of other builds that are ones that we typically do. We're gonna let you in on the behind the scenes for all these and more in this week at Circuit. Well, I am back after a long spat of COVID and stomach flu. I'm 8 pounds down since the stomach flu thing that I had. We are gonna be working on some 350Z lights. So Jordan was working with the guys last week, getting them started. Let me back up. Last week I painted them per the customer's wants, and at this point we have outgassed them in our infrared lamp, just making sure all the solvents, all that vapor stuff gets out of there before we seal them up with the lens. At this point, we're gonna go ahead and install the hex halos, other components that they got, and seal them up.
Ooh.
Yeah, so this is our infrared heat lamp. What this does is it just helps kind of bake and cure the paint. So anything that's gloss especially goes under this. Just make sure that all that solvent gets out. Any of that gets caught in the lens may have some issues with the lens itself, the outer lens. So this helps do that. We've done these, we've put these in here for I think a week and a half at this point, just to really make sure that they're all set. So I believe that Jordan filmed me taking the masking off the sides of these. These are really cool. This area right here comes clear, the little channel, and we did want to retain that, but instead of having these this silver color they come, the customer wanted them a gloss black. So these are going to be backlit as well. We're going to use some multicolor LEDs back there. It's actually a really good lamp to show what we did. We're going to go ahead and install our 86mm V1 hex on these, and then after that we're going to work on the rear illumination. So the first thing I'm gonna do is go ahead and use some compressed air just to get the dust that has accumulated from the last week off of these. We don't wanna wipe them down with the dust on it. If you wipe dust into nice shiny paint, it may scratch it. So we're gonna go ahead and blow them off, wipe them down, a little bit of glass cleaner, and then after that, install the hex halos, let those test, and then we'll move on to the next part, which is illuminating the slots here on the shroud. So I do want to mention the orientation for these. So the shroud sits inside the headlight like this. The lens kind of comes down, and then the fender's over here, the hood is up here, grill's over here. Because the lens comes down at a close angle, we have to really be careful of this top area for clearance. If we mount the halo in a spot where it's pointing up, kind of in this 25% of the shroud, it may contact the lens. We don't want to run into that issue, so what we did was we just turned it, rotated it, so that this area is kind of free and clear. It gives it a really aggressive look too, as opposed to the bottom being flat. It's the point of the hex, you'll see in just a moment. So yeah, I think it looks really good. It looks really aggressive, and I think for this crowd it's gonna fit really well. So right now we are testing the hex halos before we mount them. Obviously we're gonna test them, take photos after we put them on the shroud, but we do this with all the stuff for all of our builds, is we'll just stress test it right off the bat. We will give it like a little bit of a flex. So kind of like wiggle it a little bit, just make sure, like kind of pull on this, pinch it, just to make sure that there's no like LED clusters that could have a solder joint issue. We don't see it often, especially like anymore, but it's one of those things where before we put all the time and effort into finishing these lights, mounting the halos, putting everything back together, just to have some sort of product failure, it's not worth the 0.05%. So we'll just test it real quick for 5 minutes, just make sure everything's working good. Like I said, we'll just give like a little bit of a wiggle, kind of flex and a pinch, and if it looks good there, it should be all set to go.
What do we use the Power Mommy for?
Power Mommy. We talked about fishing line, haven't we? We've had this conversation before. Why we use this, why we love it. Fishing line to mount the halos. So in order to anchor the halos down on shrouds, there's a few different ways we could do it. One is we could use double-sided tape. We don't use double-sided tape. The reason is just a little thick. Like I said, clearance is always a concern. The other thing is we want to make sure it looks good as well. A lot of other halos or hex halos are a lot thicker, so it is more difficult to mount them cleanly and not have them hit stuff or stick out. If we add this tape to the back of it, it's just unnecessary. There's more layers to it, you could see it. The other thing that I'd be concerned about is if like a little like fuzz or hair or something like that were to stick to this when we're cleaning it with a microfiber cloth before we seal it, it's going to absolutely drive my brain insane. So I just don't want any chance of like any sort of imperfections coming up, especially once the lights are sealed up. So we just don't do that. The other way we could do is we could use glue. We don't use glue. The reason being is it's just messy. So if we use glue, the same thing, it could be seen. Also, when the glue is setting, it could drip, it could smear. There's just too many possibilities for things that can go wrong. So we choose just use the good old trusty fishing line method. So for these, what we would do is drill 2 holes side by side. These are covered by the halo itself, so you can't see them. And then we'll use those to anchor the halo down. On the back side, once we tie knots with that, we will add just a small dab of JB Weld, just to make sure that over time, with heat cycles and temperature changes, the fishing line doesn't like distort or untie itself. That's just something we do. It works out really clean. From like 2 feet away, you can't even see it. But yeah, you'll see in just a minute. I'm also gonna add a little bit of heat shrink just to cover the wires here. So you can see the wires, we just want to shore that up. So I'm gonna throw that on, and then we're gonna go mount it right here. We're not gonna move at all, actually. They're nice and taut. The orientation on these is a little different to our traditional flat bottom hex. So typically we would mount it like this. Like I said, the lens does come pretty close to this top edge. So we advise the customer that what we would do is just try to keep that top area as clear as possible. And we offer this option. So the bottom point here is 6 o'clock on a clock. So yeah, I think that looks really cool, very aggressive, very safe as far as clearing the lens itself. And yeah, I don't know, it looks mean to me. I like the flat sides with these inserts cut out. I think it just matches really well, as opposed to like having it kind of cut off if we were to mount it like this. There's a lot of benefits to doing it like this. It made more sense, and it looks very cool. So that's just about where we're gonna want it. So with the heat shrink that I put on there, it does want to, because it cooled down at a certain angle, it kind of wants to push back to that angle. So all I'm gonna do is just reheat it up for just a moment, hold this where I want it, and as it cools down, it should take that shape. It's just one of those things that's gonna just fight against me a little bit less as I tie these knots to tension them down. So it looks like it's gonna sit where I want it to. Thank you. I'm gonna go ahead and cut some fishing line here. So I'm just gonna need 2 for each side. It does look like one of the holes that I drilled for the fishing line filled in a little bit. So I'm just gonna go ahead and get a small pick tool and see if I can just poke the very end and open it up. And if not, I will grab the drill that we used and just re-drill it. It's a light covering, just like my beach outfits. I did it. I mounted it. Beautiful. So at this point, I'm gonna go ahead and put JB Weld on the knots on the back, and those should be all set. The next step is gonna be going to, what's got me?
What?
The next step after that's gonna be putting these back on the main front housing piece along with these turn signal cups that we painted gloss black. So these just need these little reflectors installed. This just helps disperse the turn signal illumination. So these are just gonna snap in here, but I'm just gonna clean them up a little bit first. There we go. Oh wow, wow. One more. Looks good. Next step is gonna be gluing these, putting them in the housing, going from there.
It is now the next morning. I'm gonna make a run to drop off all of our packages that are going out in time for Christmas. It's like the 21st today, so hopefully everything gets to you guys in time. Let's go pack that stuff up and get over to UPS. Christmas gifts dropped off. Let's get back to the shop. Quick stop for coffee though. Thank you so much. You too.
Hey there, welcome back.
What are we doing?
I am cleaning these off so we can put them together. Just where we left off, that low beam shroud with the hex halo is gonna be mounted to this piece. I just wanna make sure it's nice and clean first. And after that, probably some other stuff with these lights.
There's someone running.
Oh, he gave up.
Shane, they miss you.
Hi. This is like kind of a 3-piece front housing. So this piece that has the running light and just below the shroud fits in first, and then that goes on it, in it. Actually, no, this goes on this first. There we go. And then the whole thing goes in there. So we're gonna start with this piece and move our way on. So I am just gonna remove some of these screws. That's it. This should simply and easily slide right back into place. Oh, look at that. Holy cow. It worked. We're on our way, boys. That's it. We're done. See ya. Get my hat backwards so that's how you know it's getting heavy. Because I don't want to hit the halo as I go, I'm gonna kind of tip this up a little bit. I'm feeling confident. I'm feeling good. Luckily, we have another one of these open right now. So if I need to reference anything, I can just take a peek at that one that we already have open. That's something I always recommend, is remembering how things came apart, so when you go to put them together, it's the same way. So I just gotta wipe and dust it off just a little bit more, but that's how she's gonna look. Looking pretty icy and fuzzy. Good thing we didn't use double-sided tape. All right, the Legos are going together. These are all good. So at this point, what we're gonna do next is work on backlighting these little slats here. So we're gonna go ahead and use a couple different methods to find the best way to do it. The first thing we're gonna try is just using demon eyes. Those are just LED boards that usually sit in the projector to illuminate that little projector lens. Those are really great because they're small. They'll fit in a lot of different places. So we're gonna start with those, make sure they're bright enough. If not, we're gonna move some other options. Let's see what those options are.
777
We're having a tough time with this. We got strips, we got demon eyes. The tough part is like this looks really nice on the inside there because it's shorter, but this long one, if we were to mount it in the back, you could see like the front is illuminated, but it's just not as intense. And if we were to mount this closer, it's just really just a big spot of light. The strip, because it's thinner, it only illuminates really one of these. And if we were to use all three, it's just a lot of LEDs for those areas. So we're trying to just see what we could do to make this work. And if not, we might have to let our customer Frank know that it's just not. We could chock it full of LEDs. The big thing is that we always think about, besides looks, is functionality or longevity. So if we just load up that area with a bunch of LEDs right near an HID projector, it may have some reliability issues a couple years down the road. And what we really want to make sure is that the day they get there, they look the same, you know, for at least a long time. But we will see if we can come up with something. And if we can't, we'll think of something else.
Quick unboxing.
Oh, dude. Whoa. I don't like Max Verstappen, but you know, from a kid. So we are going to use a strip. Because there are 3 spots here, like I said, we don't want to load this area up with a lot of LEDs. Like I said, I think it might just look like a little overdone. Think that it may run into some reliability issues just having so many components. Just adding a lot of extra stuff that is just really not needed. So what we're gonna do is we are gonna illuminate the center one. What that should do is it does give it like a really cool look where it's like almost like the focus, because the top and bottom ones do get some illumination from that being there, and it being the same piece of plastic, it kind of emanates aura into the top and bottom, and then the center is like very dense, very bright. So I'll show you guys real quick. It looks actually really cool. When I first did it, I was like, So I think that looks pretty badass. Like I said, the top and bottom are still illuminated. Let's actually try to change it to a different color.
Can we get an Iron Man red?
Yeah. It still does illuminate the top and the bottom one, especially like as you tilt it. And then that center one is like nice dense LED coverage. So I think it's gonna look really good, personally. Hopefully they do too. We are gonna be sending photos to Frank right now just to make sure that that's cool with him. It's like the way he wanted it to look. Like I said, I almost like that better than all 3 of them. I think with the other factors that we have here, so we have like Demon Eye, we have the multicolor hex halo, as well as this top area is also gonna be multicolor. I feel like if we had all those super, super bright, it might take away from the other features of this build that he curated. So I think this is gonna just be the way to go, but we're gonna check with him, make sure it's the way he wants it. This is something we use fairly often here, this aluminum tape. So this is actually really good for holding stuff in place. Great part about it is the adhesive is really strong, and aluminum does not conducive to heat or electricity. So we shouldn't have any problem using it for this. The other thing this will do is it is semi-reflective. So if we use it for certain areas, it does help reflect light out. So my plan is to use this on the back of the strip and then just have a nice solid, clean, flat layer across all three of these. So what that should do is A, it should allow the strip to sit flush in there, be nice and tight with the adhesive, and then B, it should help reflect some of that light out through those other top and bottom channels. But we always test everything before we go ahead and say this is it. So we're gonna try it out, make sure it's working right. Like I said, we've used this same method before. We use it with a lot of other builds, so tried and true. So what I'm doing right now is the really great part about the aluminum tape as well is it is a little rigid, or like if you flex it or bend it, it will stay there. So what I'm doing is I'm actually just going through with my finger and just pushing it on the edge of where I want it to be. So that when I pull it out, all I have to do now is just cut this off and we have the exact shape and length that we need. So I'm just going to apply it to the back of this. I do need to cut the strip down to size. We can cut it at certain intervals. I'm gonna put the aluminum tape on the back just like this and stick it down. And then if you see, I'm gonna use a scrap piece here. When we pull the backing off where the adhesive is, this is also semi-reflective as well. So it should help a little bit, even just like a lighter color, help trap some of that light in there, and that way we're not just illuminating everything inside or behind this area, because we do want the demon eye to stand out. So if we just let that roll in there and shine everywhere, it may take away from that.
Shane has talent.
Better get some talent in washing your shirts, dude. Get the belly grease on. So we are taking a little break on the Z. We figured out the strips. We're just gonna go ahead and cut those and then solder them together. But we're gonna switch gears a little bit to finish these up. So these are for another customer of ours. They are a Pokemon themed 2015 to 2017 STI set of lights. So we had to get one of the housings re-hydro dipped. So we got that back and these are ready to roll. So our hydro dipper came through, looks great. So we're gonna go ahead and slap them together now. So these we are using a little bit of forbidden fruit. We are using the Subispeed Morimoto XBT RGB C lights. If you've inquired about having these installed and we've said no, we still say no. This is just a very big exception. So we do love Morimoto's product. We use it for almost all of our builds, but these have a little bit of an issue with the solder joints popping loose. So what that means is all these little LED chips, they're obviously soldered to this board, but the issue is this board is flexible. You can see it's like, so the flexible board is nice for installs, so it obviously contours the headlight, which is great. The issue is over time with heat, with road vibration, the solder joints can get a little brittle, and especially if they're flexed or being like pinched at all, they could let go. And what that ends up looking like for this product is there'll be like little like pixelated areas. So if this is set to white, there might be like a strip of 3 that are like purple, there might be a strip of 3 that are orange, just meaning they're missing a single color. So RGB combined makes a white color. So if it doesn't have green, if the solder joint for green for that cluster has snapped, then it'll just show the blue and red making purple. We let our customer know about the possible failures that could happen. They're fine with it. There's no like warranty with these besides the product warranty. They're cool with it. We're gonna install them. So we're just gonna make sure that we do everything we can to ensure that they don't have that issue. You know, it's kind of just up to the environment they're put into. Like I said, we don't use products that we know may have some issues. That's why we don't use these. But this is just one of those things that he was cool with the risks, cool with the possibilities, and if they do have a problem, you know, he's gonna have us fix them, just knowing that it's possible. All right, so now that he has signed the waiver on those, we also have these cool Molded Innovations amber side markers. We did a etching of some different Pokemon. I'm not familiar with the all the different ones. I played the, I had Bulbasaur back when I was a young boy with the blue cartridge for my Game Boy. So I know this is Mew, I know that much, but I don't know this one. Looks like a star thing. Oh, its feet are up there. I thought these were the feet. They're way up there. Oh, it's short. These are gonna go on the amber side markers. This is something we typically will paint black. We can paint ambers different colors. So if you wanted it to be like a factory like body color, like paint match to your car, do like logos, we can do any patterns on it, or we can etch them like these. So most ambers obviously come that amber orange reflective color. These ones, they have clear as well as the tinted. So we use that for the etching on this one. So with the sea lights, the diode ones, we typically don't tie them down with fishing line. The reason being is they fit nice and snug in there. Because like I said, these have like a little bit of a flex to them, I did just put one piece of fishing line down here, and then I have another that's gonna go in up there. And that's how it's gonna sit right there. Just cleaning these out a little bit so there's no dust or anything weird in there. Typically we would have the sea light right inside of this diffused area. You can see with this one, it's a little outside. The reason we did that was just to try to alleviate any sort of pressure or pushing on it due to, like we said, that kind of that possible solder issue. So having like a little more space here for it to sit, not get like pinched so tight, we're hoping will help alleviate that and increase longevity. All right, these are done. So the next part is going to be the internal parts. I gotta put the low beam lens, projector lens on, and then do the high beam shrouds. And then after that, should be good to clean up and put together. Jigglypuff. She was thick.
Jigglypuff.
What?
You don't know Jigglypuff, do you? You don't know Pokemon, do you?
All right, so we are back to the 2015 STI. These are getting the gills in the center area, so we are just installing some backlighting. This LED chip right here works alongside the low beam LED, so we did relocate that backwards. We did apply some thermal paste to help ward off heat. There is a heat sink built into it. So it's the same idea as the one up here, but pushing it back, it's not gonna allow as much light or heat from that to be present on the gills, and then B, it'll allow us to mount multicolor LED facing forward. So this chip right here is in series with the low beam. So if you remove one of the chips, the other one's not gonna work. So we do have to keep both those in the headlight and functioning. If we were to relocate this somewhere else that didn't have a heat sink, that we weren't able to apply thermal paste to, it may burn out, which would cause the low beam to burn out too. So this is a really good area to relocate it. It's gonna be nice and safe and happy, and we can still have the multicolor functions that the customer's looking for. So for this, we're just gonna use a 60mm halo. The reason we do that is A, it's a really simple component to install. B, it's the same LED types that we're using for the halos, Demon Eyes, and the Sea Light, so it's gonna be consistent, the same color. And yeah, we just like using them for this. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. I see a lot of people like make their own like LED boards, or like I've seen a lot of strips be like suspended in the air for stuff like this. A halo works just fine, it's the same thing. It does give really good light dispersion as well. So this is gonna go right here. I drilled a hole. I'm just gonna anchor it down with some wire. Same with down here. And then I'm just gonna put a cable tie right on there just to make sure that if anyone were to tug this during install, it's not gonna jostle the halo loose. It's gonna be nice and taut.
Shane, I'm just gonna have to measure you real quick.
Okie doke, we are back. I got both those halos mounted, which is sick, so cool. All these like different mounting variations in this build. It's a good one. It's a good one to film. Thanks for joining us. For the Demon Eyes, there's not really a great way to mount it to the low beam. Typically, we would either mount it somewhere up here, but obviously a lot of that's cut away and it's also aluminum. And then back here, I don't want to screw it into this piece. This piece helps reflect light out, and just how this one's designed, I don't want to put a screw into it. It may have some repercussions. So what I did was actually took a Demon Eye bracket, just an H1 Demon Eye bracket, and actually bent it to a certain angle that's going to allow us to mount the Demon Eye nice and tight in that low beam area. So you'll see kind of what I did in just a moment. So as you'll see, very carefully and clumsily, there we go. Mount the Demon Eye there. So you can see the Demon Eye is going to shine right into this area here, which is where we want it to. So it should illuminate that nice and bright. And you will see that it's not perfectly straight. The reason for that is the bracket does bend up here. So rather than making it straight and then hoping this doesn't chafe through or have an issue to the board, mounting it just like this is gonna be fine. Because this is an RGB Demon Eye board instead of like a proprietary, like the Diode Dynamics type, I'm not worried about the colors mismatching side to side depending on the angle that I mount it. Like can happen with the Diode Dynamics style. So these ones are gonna be just fine, nice and happy, and very safe, very safe. Do I talk too much? So at this point, we have both demon eyes installed. We have the gill light source installed. So the last thing is just gonna be these front shrouds. So we have these mini Gatling ones, and then we have the factory low beam one that houses the gills as well. So we're just gonna install these next up. The reason we don't wanna do it now is it is 5 o'clock, we're leaving in a half hour. If I assemble everything, glue it in, all that stuff, and over the weekend, like a little bit of dust gets behind one of the lenses or something like that, it's gonna be a lot of work to take it apart. So typically this part of the process, we will wait until we have enough time to do all this and seal the light together. So yeah, we'll reconvene. It is the Friday before Christmas. We will reconvene Tuesday and get these together. So we'll see you then. Hope you have a good Christmas. Happy holidays, no matter what you subscribe to. Happy Toyotathon. We'll see you guys next time.